Today we're going to explore an easy way to map your parts through bubbles and arrows. And even though it actually might seem really easy, there is a lot of depth that emerges from using this kind of technique. If we have never met, hi, I'm Valentina Manini and I am a certified IFS practitioner and a psychedelic assisted therapy facilitator. I also have a master's degree in leading change in both fellow humans and organizations, which shows I have been obsessed with what it means to be human for a good 15 years. And at the same time, a lot of clarity in the kind of relationships that the different parts have with each other. And that is a dimension that we do not always consciously explore, but it actually really brings a lot of understanding to then appreciate the bigger picture of who you are and the way that you behave, and in the way in which these parts are all connected to each other to then create the person that you are and the behaviors that then you express in the world or you do not express in the world. I start with the part that is present. I put it on the left side of the paper, just with a circle, and I split the bubble in two. And usually in the upper part, I either put a description of the part or its name. For example, I might write perfection. And then in the lower part of the bubble, I simply enough write where I feel it in the body. And I might feel it as a tightening in my chest. And as I work with the perfectionist part, I might notice that there are other parts that are polarized with it. There are other parts that don't like it. And I usually put those parts on the right side of the paper so that I know that there are parts that are reacting to the perfectionist part. What usually comes up is there is a part that is frustrated with it, which is something I might feel in my arms as a kind of nervousness. And there might be other parts that show up. There might be the rational part that is, of course, in the head. It shows up as a kind of pressure. And if I want to add a little bit more of information, I will just make a little stick going out. And the rational part, for example, wants to know, why are you still there? And usually comes out that there are different things that these parts want you to know. And you don't need to go too much into details, but that's really up to you to feel into how much you want to write down, how much you want to externalize on paper, right? And how much details you actually want to retain about that experience that you are either having or that you had in a session. And when parts work together in a certain sense, I connect them with double lines. And when parts are polarized, I connect them with this kind of fragmented line. And as I work with the perfectionist part, I might notice that there is a feeling of sadness underneath. There is a feeling of sadness in my belly. And as I stay with the sadness and I work with the perfectionist part, and when I started doing that job, then I might find the little child that it's protecting. And I'm gonna show that relationship with an arrow. The perfectionist is protecting a little child. And as I feel into the little child, as I ask permission to the perfectionist part to bring comfort to the little child, then I can start to feel into her. I might see an image of her. I might feel her more strongly in my body. I could feel that sadness rushing up into my eyes, wanting to cry. And as I witness more of that, I might realize that this little girl was maybe 6 years old. And if it's something that is valuable to you, you can even add more clarity for yourself in the feeling into each other part. And of course, knowing that this is an exile, and noticing whether the parts that are showing here are either managers or firefighters. In this case, the frustration, I mean, parts can often have a role both as a manager and a firefighter, right? It kind of depends whether they are coming up in a proactive way or in a reactive way. There are parts that maybe for years come up in a reactive way, but then as their strategy works really, really well, it kind of gets promoted to a managerial role. And that's the case, for example, of anxiety. It happens that anxiety is something that originally comes up in a reactive way, but for some people at some point it gets promoted to a kind of an umbrella that deals with pretty much everything. It becomes a managerial way of living life to keep us from taking risks of any kind, in which living itself might be considered a risk, and therefore the anxiety is always present to limit social interactions, to prevent too many interactions of any possible kind, to keep us withdrawn and isolated in our home. And so it's not always so straightforward to see whether a part is a manager or a firefighter. So you might want to just identify these parts as protectors, or you might want to identify them as manager or as firefighters. If you want to add a level of complexity or depth or clarity, you can also color code your bubbles. You might want to express managers with a green bubble, and just decide what colors make the most sense for you so that you can actually get a bit of clarity right away when you look at your paper. Something else that you can do is to show the prominence or the level of activation of a part with the size of the bubble. So if the perfectionist part is very present, then you can actually represent it with a bigger bubble that shows that it's very active, it's very blended, and it's holding on very strongly to its role. It's very protective, it's being very defensive in a way, right, of the role that it has been having for a very long time, and maybe it feels threatened in some way by the way in which it's being approached. Or maybe a trigger happened that brought it very strongly to the forefront. And sometimes there are parts that are just, barely perceivable. They're just, on the outskirts, they're very, like, you can feel that they're there, but they don't have a very strong presence. Their energy is very feeble, a bit misty, a bit cloudy, not really graspable. It might be a part that is hidden and wants to stay hidden. At the same time, you can feel it in some way. And so I represent them with this in this way, so that I know that they're there, but I also know that it's a part that maybe I'll need to put some more effort to connect with, to get more connected to. Let me know in the comments if you found this valuable, and if there is anything actually that you would like to add about how you map your parts. If there's anything that you discover that is very valuable for you and it works very well, please just add it in the comments so that everyone who watches this video can also read about the ways that you have found and might actually resonate very deeply for them.